Welcome, 8th graders, to our screencast for Tuesday, April 22nd. The screencast is being brought to you by me, your teacher, Mr. Harry, and I'm going to teach you all about layers today in Photoshop. I will try very hard to keep this screencast to under 10 minutes. At the end of the screencast, you will have an assignment, so do your best to pay attention, and you will be taking part in the activities as I do them. So I'll remind you to start Photoshop and to do things along the way. So first thing you might want to do is pause the screencast and start Photoshop and create a brand new file that is in the same size that you've been using in the past, and that would be the 800 by 600 flavor. So remember, if you need to pause this and check this, yeah, this is where you go. You want to go to web 8 by 6, be cool like me and say it like that. Your background should be white by default. So when you create your new file like I have done, then you may come back and watch the screencast. So anyhow, in this screencast, you are going to unlock some of the secrets of Photoshop by learning to work with layers. So in order to work with layers, you have to go to your window menu right here and drag down to layers. Layers are the things that separate Photoshop from other paint programs that don't have them. So as you can see, we've got one layer called background. It is locked. Don't need to know a whole lot about that right now, but what I would like you to do is to pick a foreground color of gray and then dump some gray paint into your background layer. You may do that now. Now that you've dumped some gray into your background, I may dump a little bit lighter gray so you can differentiate the canvas from the non-canvas area. We're going to start to work with some shapes. And one of the central figures in this whole thing today is the Move tool right here. Choose that tool now, and I want you to make sure you have the options set along the top and the options bar up here that I have. All three of these boxes should be checked. Auto select layer, show bounding box, and show highlight on rollover. Okay? And then our first activity, we're going to be creating a brand new layer. Okay? I always tell kids when you're working with layers, look before you leap. So this little icon right here that I'm pointing to is how you create a new layer. And a new layer, when you click it like I did, can be thought of as its own private entity. You can dump things into this layer that won't impact things in other layers. So whether you name your layer out of the gate is not always essential, but for now, to get you aware of it, we're going to. So I'd like you to double click layer 1 and rename it as red circle. Okay, be nice if you spelled it right, Mr. Harry. C-I-R-C-L-E. And then what I want you to do is to take a marquee tool, an elliptical marquee, and remember, hold shift when you drag so you get a perfect circle. And then I'd like you to dump some red paint as your circle. So now your drawing looks like this. And as you can see in the layer palette, the red circle is the only layer that contains paint. It does not paint red into your background. So when you're finished, you're going to want to hit Command D to deselect it and immediately switch to your Move tool. And this is what the first thing you'll learn about layers is. When you take your Move tool and you drag the center of the image, you can move the image anywhere on the layer that you want. Okay? And so really, to get a better idea how layers work, we'd like to create a second layer. So let's take our red circle, maybe position it up in the corner. And again, if you fall behind and you can't process all this, just hit pause and then go out and do the activity and come back to the screencast. Again, I'll try to keep it short. I'm watching my clock. I think I started at 7:59, so it's 8 o'clock. Better get going. Okay, let's go back to our palette and let's click to create an additional layer. Okay, see where it's called layer 1? Now always look at your layer palette. Make sure that you're not in the wrong layer when you're painting. So for example, if I clicked here, I'd be painting in the red circle, or worse yet, in the background. Don't want to do that. So I want to go to the top and rename this top new layer as blue square. Okay, now make sure that you're in the blue square layer when you draw your blue square. And to draw the blue square, take a rectangular marquee and hold shift when you drag it so you get a perfect square. And then fill that square in with blue with your paint bucket. So pause as needed. Remember, when you're done, hit Command D to deselect. And then immediately switch to your Move tool. And look what you can do. When you move the layer, it goes over the top of the other. So they're own separate entities. Here's a nice thing. As you hover over the red circle, it shows you the that's called highlight on rollover. So if you click on that, that layer, notice over here, has become active. So now this becomes the active layer that will contain the edits. So this is called your layer palette. To select a layer, simply hover over it and click. And you probably didn't see the highlight over the square because I have a blue square and it has a blue outline. So that's probably, in case you're wondering why I did that. Things you can do with layers. Because the blue square is on top of the red circle, it covers it. Okay, like you did in other applications when you drew shapes, if you right-click a layer, you can send it backward, and that'll put the blue square behind the red circle. Notice in the palette how it did that. Blue square is now underneath red circle. That's why when you drag this, the red circle can cover the blue square. See? Whatever layer is on top is the layer that covers the other. Okay, let's make yet a third new layer, and let's call this yellow. Come on, Mr. Harry, you can type ellipse. And this time, take your elliptical marquee and draw anywhere you want an ellipse and dump some yellow paint in. So this will be our third separate layer. And again, after you dump your paint, oops, silly me, after you dump your paint with your bucket, don't forget to deselect. So bucket, there's my paint. Command D to deselect, immediately switch to my move tool. So that's the top layer covers this one. So now as you intersect your layers, if you take the yellow ellipse and you want it to go behind the nice royal blue square, you'd have to right click and you could do send backwards twice, or what happens if I do send to back, right? It sends it underneath all the other layers, of course, with the exception of the background. So there's a lot of carryover from other graphics applications, okay? The other thing I wanted to demonstrate with layers were some simple, what we call transformations, okay? So the most basic transformation a guy should learn is to resize a layer. So here's a tip. If you take a layer and you poke its eye out right in front, see this? That hides the layer, okay? So if I want all of your attention on the blue square, I might take a minute and hide the other two layers. Now be careful. You know, those layers are hidden. I want the blue square to be the active layer, the blue layer with the light blue highlight in it, so that when I drag it, I can edit it. Anyhow, for my transformation, okay, if you grab a corner handle, you can resize it. Okay, so size it bigger like I did. When you make a transformation, you have to click the check mark to accept it. Or watch what happens if I click the red circle. That means cancel. I don't want to transform it. So again, to resize, grab a handle. If you want to keep it in perfect proportion, guess what? What key do you hold down? Right, Shift. If you hold Shift when you drag a corner, it keeps it in proportion. Okay, so as you resize your object, understand that that's a basic transformation. Other transformations you should learn: if you point outside of a corner handle, you can rotate clockwise, counterclockwise, and if you're really aware, if you look up at the top, you can even designate a certain amount. So really, if you're a math guy and you're kind of, set on numbers, you could say, hey, I want a 45-degree turn. So if I type in 45, and another way to accept your transformation, if you don't want to use a mouse, just hit return. Bing, transformation accepted. So easy to make layer transformations. Okay, basic 2, resize, and then grab outside of a corner and rotate. We'll leave the transformations at that for now. Basic rotation transformation, basic resize transformation. Hide a layer by showing that little eyeball. So that's called a layer stack. We have 3 layers besides our background. We can change the stack also by dragging over here. I don't know if I showed you that. I didn't. But if I drag the yellow ellipse layer straight up like this, that's the equivalent of right-clicking and saying, if I wanted to, bring to front. So I could do this with the red circle. Right-click. Let's do, I notice I can't bring it to front. I can send it backwards. I'm not sure why bring to front isn't an option here, because I could bring it, up on top of this layer with a drag. It should let me do it with a right-click. Okay, now it's something to do with the blue square. I could do bring to front. Don't know what I was doing wrong before, but those should always be available. So you should be comfortable working with layers, making multiple layers, dragging them around, making transformations like resizing, checking it, rotating, checking it, and then moving layers to either the front or the back of the stack. Okay? Now, through the magic of editing, I'm going to change this picture, and your assignment will be described to you in no time at all. So I'm going to pause this and come right back. Sorry, I forgot to mention this. For layers that you don't want anymore, and I do want you to get rid of these layers, a couple ways to delete a layer. Number one, you can right-click a layer and say delete layer. Or some kids just love doing this. They drag the layer to this teensy tiny trash can and do that. Okay. Or you can just select the layer like I have and hit the delete key on your keyboard. And it'll ask you, do you really want to do this again? Yes. And you can do multiples. If you click the top layer blue square and you hold the shift key, you can select 2 layers at once. So it's a 2-for-1 Tuesday. Right click, delete layer. So that's faster than doing them one at a time. So I would like you to delete all the layers except the background. Okay, and then I'm going to pause this again and come back and show you what you have to create as your assignment for today. That'll illustrate your expertise in layers. Okay, through the magic of editing, I'm back. This is your assignment. Look carefully at the layer palette. Yes, you are going to be making a cheeseburger. So I drew mine rough. Probably not as good as you're going to be at it because I was under the gun trying to get things done fast. Anyhow, in your palette, you must have the following layers. A bottom bun, meat. This is top view of my cheeseburger, by the way. Cheese, ketchup, mustard, pickles. I did not draw the lettuce, but you let us have lettuce. You should have lettuce on your cheeseburger. So how you draw them is up to you. Hopefully you're more creative than I was. You might want to put some sesame seeds in your bottom bun. No need for a top bun. These are the minimum number of layers you must have. If you want to add a couple more layers for extra things on your burger, you can. Please don't put bacon on it. I don't know who started that. Bacon, fundamentally wrong, does not belong on a cheeseburger, period. Bacon, no. Bacon is BLT. Leave the bacon off the burger. Not meant to be there. Okay, my rant on bacon. You can put bacon on yours, I guess, but it's wrong. Still fundamentally wrong. All right, when you're finished, pat yourself on the back. Maybe it's close to lunch. You're probably getting hungry. Burger looks pretty good right now, but I will be looking at that first thing on Wednesday morning. So have some fun. Make yourself a burger. You can add other items if you want to put silverware, blah, blah, blah. Have some fun. All right, but get used to working with layers. Okay, you've been a great audience. Adios.